Welcome back to PSC's Tech Byte. Today we keep on talking about the Microsoft Graph Toolkit components, and specifically we will talk about the mgt-person, the mgt-person-card, and the mgt-people. The mgt-person and person-card components are useful to display a single person or a contact, and we can configure quite some properties like, for example, the ID of the user to render or the query to search for the user to render, or we can even provide a specific person object that we want to render with the component. Internally, the mgt-person relies on mgt-person-card to render the card of the user. We can also extend the component overriding some of the methods that you see on this slide. We can customize the CSS. We can customize the template for rendering our component, as well as we can intercept events when the user will click on line 1, line 2, or line 3 of the UI. The mgt-people control is yet another control that we can use to render a list of people or contacts. And again, as before, we can specify a query for people or contacts to render. We can specify the ID of a group to get the people from, or we can, for example, play with specific queries to determine the people to render. We can declare the maximum number of items that we want to see, and as before, we can provide the overriding in extensions of specific methods of the component, as well as we can customize the CSS style or the template for rendering the items. So, like always, let me move to the demo environment and let me show you how to use these components in action. So, here we have the person component in action. You can see we have a person rendered with the icon. I can hover on it and I can see the person card. I can expand the person card and stuff like that. From a code point of view, we use the mgt-person component and we specify the person query for me, meaning myself right now, with the 2 lines rendering and with the hover action to show the person card. We can, of course, customize the UI, for example, of the person card using a custom template and providing the JSON of the person. So if I save and I go back, if I will hover now, I will see the JSON of my person object. And of course, I can play with it. I can display the display name, for example, to slightly customize the rendering. And as you can see now, I see the display name. And I can eventually customize not only the rendering of the person card, but for example, of the line 2, and I can show in bold the person display name right here. So let me save, and as you can see now, the display name is in bold in the line 2 of my rendered card. The same applies for the people control. So if I go to the people page, here we can see a list of people. Right now there is just myself still with the card showed on hover. But if we go to the people page, we can see that we can provide multiple users. So here, for example, I can provide my friend and colleague Guido. So on microsoft.com, I can save, and if I go back, I'll see 2 icons for 2 people, and I can hover on them. And I can also play with the group ID, for example. So instead of using the people queries, I can provide the group ID of a Microsoft 365 group that I want to use as the target. And if I save, I will be able to see all of the users inside this group. And we can play with whatever kind of query we like, either using the group ID or providing a list of items or providing a query list of criteria that we want to use to select people. We can also customize the template in the mgt-people component as we did before with the person one. For example, I can customize the rendering of the single person inside the list of people, and I can still get the person object as a JSON object. If I save and I go back, here we can see the JSON of all of the objects. And of course, we can, like before, use the display name property or whatever else property we like to show specific information in the list. So, like always with the MGT components, really powerful components that we can use to query Microsoft Graph and to render content with eventually custom rendering for those information that we want to show in these components. Like always, thank you for watching this video. I hope you found it interesting, and I'm really looking forward to seeing you next week. And remember to subscribe to this channel. Thank you.